Hey guys, Mr. Riz here to help you out on the third part of chapter 4. So chapter 4 is a pretty big chapter. But this third part, we're going to focus on specifically solving quadratic equations. Now we've already gone over one way to solve a quadratic equation, and that's by factoring. But what we're going to do is look at a couple other ways. And the first way that we're going to look at it in this section is to solve by graphing. So technically we can solve a quadratic equation by graphing. But the first thing we want to do is just basically go through and instead of setting the equation equal to 0, like any quadratic expression would be, we're going to turn into a quadratic function and we're going to set it equal to y. So we're basically going to go from equal to 0 to equal to y, or y equals. And then to solve by graphing, what we're going to do are to find what are known as the roots, or the x-intercepts. All right, where does the graph cross the x-axis? So we got a couple of pretty easy examples here that we're going to go through. I'm going to show you guys what I would want you guys to graph when it comes to solving. All righty. So we're going to do these two problems here. I'm going to open up Desmos because that's the good source here. It's the quickest, it's the easiest, it's the fastest. It's a pretty good resource. Need to reopen that PDF. Just want to look at these graphs here. Here we go. Okay. So Desmos graphing calculator. Here we're going to type in the equation. We got y equals 2x squared minus 20x plus 48. I'm going to pause this. All right, sorry about that. Let's go through. So if we're going to graph these, we can go onto Desmos and we can convert this to a table by clicking the gear, clicking the table. Now, obviously, these points here are pretty far off the graph, so we'll just keep the table going. Okay, here's some points that we can graph. Those are good. So let's see, 3 is at 6. So over 3 up to 6. 4 is at 0. 5 is at -2. 6 is at 0. 7's at 6. Connect the dots. Okay, we graph the quadratic. So if we want to solve this, the solution for this are going to be the x-intercepts. All right, and so that would be x equals 4 and x equals 6. Now there's the answer. That was a super easy one. Now, the reason why we're going to use this is because, technically we could have solved this by factoring. We could have said x squared minus 20x plus 48 equals 0. We could have factored out a GCF of 2. We could have divided everything by 2. Just showing you guys, you don't have to do this, but this is what we did in the previous section, okay? We've got x squared minus 10x plus 24 equals 0. And we would go through and figure out, okay, what two numbers multiply together give us 24, add together to get -10. That'd be -4, -6. And we would say x minus 4 times x minus 6 equals 0. And then we would set both of those problems equal to 0 and solve. And we'd get x equals 4 and x equals 6. So you can see here, solving by graphing gives us the exact same answer. But because we can use graphing calculators, we can actually get the answers a whole lot quicker. So let's try the next one here. Do the same thing here. We got -x squared plus 3x minus 2. So remember, we got to have the equation in y equals -x squared plus 3x minus 2. Okay, and we're going to get a table here. Get going. Okay, so we'll try to get some points that are on our graph. All right, we got. All right, so you can kind of see with this graph is a little bit different than before. So we can plot our points here. So let's see, -1 is at -6, 0 is at -2, 1 is at 0, 2 is at 0, 3 is at -2, 4 is at 6, and pretty much gives us our graph. Now we don't quite know exactly where the vertex is at. I guess we could figure that out by doing like -b/2a, if you guys remember from chapter 3, but we're just getting a general idea. So we can see that this graph crosses real nicely at x equals 1 and also x equals 2. And if we wanted to try to solve those by factoring, we could have got the exact same solution. All right. So you can see the graphs don't have to be perfect, but if we can use a graphing calculator, we can get the right solutions. Okay, so let's talk about, another type of graphing calculator that we can use. And this is what we're going to try to focus on here because, it's a big one that you guys will have access to if you take the ACT or any other state test. And that's the graphing calculators from Texas Instruments, the TI calculators. So I'm going to open up mine here so you guys can kind of follow along with me. Now we can do the same thing on a Texas Instrument calculator. It just takes a couple more steps than what Desmo uses. So I would say, definitely try to practice using the Texas Instrument calculator. It's a good skill, good knowledge to have. But yeah, once you have the Desmos, you can use that. It's actually easier. So we're going to do this next problem, but we're going to use it on the Texas Instrument calculator. I'm going to move my head so I don't block the view. So on a TI calculator, you're going to graph it by pressing the Y equals. If there's anything there, clear it out. Then type in, now don't type in a minus, you have to use the negative. X squared plus 10x minus 26. You can click graph and that gives you what the graph looks like. All right, now if we want to get points, we can get a table by going second table. And that gives them some points here, and we can scroll up and down through the table to try to find some numbers, some values to plot. Let's see, it looks like around 3 is the first one we can do. 3 is at -5. 4 is at -2. Oh, I'm wrong spot here. 3 is at -5. 4 is at -2. 5 is at -1. And then it keeps going down like so. All right, so we got a graph. So one thing that we never focused on with factoring, because it never really worked out with factoring, are answers like this. So here we go. If we want to find the solutions, we want to find out where does this cross the x-axis. It does not. So we're going to say that there's no solution. Another way to think about it here too is like, could we figure out what two numbers multiply together to give us 26, add together to get 10? It's just not going to happen. And sometimes when it doesn't happen, doesn't mean that there isn't an answer. It's just one that doesn't work out nice. So here's an example of there's just no solution because that graph is never going to cross the x-axis. All right, let's keep doing a couple more. We can see all the different scenarios that are popping up. So same thing here. Let's clear our drawing. All right, we're going to do -2x squared minus 16x minus 28. Hit the graph. Okay, so this does cross the x-axis. We know that. Let's go to our table by doing second graph. Oh, no, second graph to get to our table. And it gets a couple numbers. Now I'm going to go back here to see. So you have to use the up and down arrows if you're changing. All right, we got -6 is at -4. -5 is at 2. All right, -4 is at +4, then 2, and then next one's down here at -4. So we got a graph that goes up like this. Okay, so in this graph, you can kind of see we're not going to get nice whole numbers as our answers. What is this? Is this -5.5, -5.4, -5.3? What about this one here? Is this -2.8, -2.9? What is that? And if we don't want to try to go through and factor as what we can, this is how we can use the graphing calculator. So to use the graphing calculator, we'll go back to our graph. What we have to do is to ask it to find or estimate the solution. To do that, we got to press second and then trace, bring up the calculations. And what we're trying to find is a 0. Remember, we're trying to find out where this equation equals 0. We'll press enter, and then it's going to ask us to go left and right bound. So we're going to use a little arrow here. Sometimes you have to press over here, and you're going to basically follow along the curve, and you're going to just find an X number that's to the left of where we cross it, okay? So if X was -6, We'll press enter. And then we're going to name a value to the right. We can actually move this, press over, or we can just type it in. I can say like definitely -5 is to the right. And then it has this guess. And all it does, the guess is actually makes it so it can calculate it even quicker. But I'm going to guess -5.5. And then it actually does the math. And so the solution is, and we'll just round to the second decimal place, x equals -5.41. Okay, so that would have been a really tough number to just guess. Probably been a weird fraction too if we were going to solve by factoring. All right, so we got to find the other one, and we go through that same process. So we press second, trace, and we say we're going to find a 0. I like to type in the number. So if I want to find this one here, I'm going to say -3 is to the left, -2 is to the right of it, and I'm going to guess is at -2.8. All right, and there we go. It will actually do the math. It finds it out. So the other answer is x equals -2.59 if we round to the second decimal place. Okay, so let's see, is this the ones I want you guys to try on your own? Yep, okay. So this pretty much wraps up solving by graphing. So you guys have these two problems here. I want you guys to try to figure them out. You'll put your answers in on Canvas. If you have any questions, ask, but you can see graphing and using different graphing tools are really nice. All right, guys, have a good one, and I will see you later. Bye.